yet another exciting session on decoding the legal risks and building opportunities in Web3. So we'll be glad to issue you a blockchain-powered certificate at the end of the session. So do fill the Google form that has been will be presented to you in between. And without further ado, let me welcome our speaker for the day, Sneha Vijayan. She's a co-founder of Resolutio. She's a legal technologist and researcher. Apart from holding an LLB degree and an LLM in international arbitration and dispute resolution from NUS, she's also being awarded numerous awards, including the Dow Star and the DevCon Scholar in the legal track category. So, Sneha, over to you.
Thank you, Nilima, and thank you so much for facilitating this KBA. My name is Sneha. I have been exploring the intersection of law and technology since I did my master's on international arbitration. And the reason I started looking at blockchain particularly was to explore how we can use these technologies to make justice more accessible. Over the years, that work has extended into different other areas. And today I'm going to be talking about how you as developers and builders within the Web3 space can navigate this space, but taking into consideration certain legal aspects so that you remain protected in this journey. So let me start by sharing my screen. Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes, Sneha, it's visible.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Just give me a second. Okay. So I wanted to start with a question on whether you have any fears when it comes to building on Web3, especially within the legal context. It would be great if you can just post any concerns that you might have onto the chat box, and we can start from there. Any concerns at all, even if they aren't like specifically legal, any concerns that you might have, you can just post into the group. Or if you have absolutely no concerns and if you're confident in navigating the space, that's fine too. Maybe you can just write about that. I'll give you a minute. We'll just wait for some of the questions to come in and then address all of it together. Okay, so we have one question and one concern. So the question pertains to whether blockchain itself could be used. Yes, two concerns. Blockchain itself could be used for arbitration. That I will address towards the end of the workshop or talk today. The other two concerns that have come up is, of course, the use of tokens in RWAs in blockchain projects, which has been a prominent concern considering we don't have specific laws, whether they be securities laws or any other laws that formally recognizes these tokens, therefore making it difficult to design projects which use this. The second question is regarding failure to fulfill contractual obligations or disagreements about terms of contract. Okay. This, I believe, maybe in the context of smart contracts, there aren't currently any laws which formally recognize smart contracts, and hence failure to recognize contractual obligations pertaining to this itself is vague or unanswered. The third question is, are there any legal measures we need to take if the Web3 app that I'm building involves crypto transactions? Okay. This is something that we will address soon. Swapping of tokens. Okay. So most of the questions or most of the concerns that have come in today pertain to recognition of tokens, use of tokens when building Web3 projects, and general questions on whether specific legal measures are to be taken when building projects, right? So today what I'm going to do is I'm first going to talk about existing Indian laws pertaining to blockchain technology, and then I will talk about general laws in India that could be applied and global laws that could be applied even if you're building the project in India. Finally, to understand how these laws could be applied, or even when there might not be specific laws to apply to certain situations like use of tokens, what is it that you can do? This is something we'll explore using a case study towards the end. So the first 15 minutes, we'll explore the law. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to raise your hand, or if you want to ask questions via the chat box, we can do that as well. So before we move into the Indian legal landscape, just to summarize, the primary concerns that most of you have, or the larger blockchain community or a larger blockchain builder community has, is on the legal recognition of tokens in India. So in India, the laws pertaining to blockchain is very limited. As you might already know, we have laws pertaining to taxation, which is very...
Sneha, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
The screen remains blurred. So could you just
Oh, okay. Yeah,
correct it?
yeah. Let me just stop and then share again. Is this okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you. Just give me a second. Okay. So in India, the laws, specific laws pertaining to blockchain, it's very limited. So you already know that there are tax laws. Most of us who engage with cryptocurrency knows that we have to pay a certain amount of money to the government if we make gains pertaining to the currency, right? And second, we have the PMLA, right, for prevention of money laundering in India. PMLA provides certain actions that are to be undertaken by entities that handle virtual digital assets. This pertains to requiring that they take adequate measures to verify identity of users. This requires these organizations or platforms to record transactions that are happening, and also to report suspicious activities to necessary bodies. So to address one of the questions that were asked pertaining to, let me just go back to the chat just a minute, pertaining to if any specific actions are to be taken when building platforms within Web3. If you handle virtual digital assets, the Money Laundering Act is something that you should definitely look into. Unfortunately, we don't have many specific laws pertaining to blockchain in India, unlike other countries like Singapore, Switzerland, etc., which have specific laws which recognizes tokens, which identifies tokens based on their use case. For example, tokens which can be identified as securities, and therefore securities laws will apply to them, or tokens which can be identified just as property. In India, no such laws exist yet. However, in the absence of explicit laws pertaining to blockchain, we can look at other general laws such as the Information Technology Act or the contract law. So based on which area you're working on, right? For example, let's say you're building a healthcare application or you're building a legal application, right? You see what laws which already you see what are the laws which already exist in India that might apply here. So maybe if you're building some consumer protection, or some tool or some platform pertaining to consumers, such as sale of certain products or services via an application, maybe look into consumer protection laws. So to sum up, to ensure that you don't attract specific risks when you're building on chain, you look at what laws might apply. Since we are talking about building on chain, we look at specific blockchain laws. Taxation laws and the PMLA are two specific laws in India. So if you are handling virtual assets, then you look at then you try and see if PMLA applies and take necessary protections. Now, and then if there is a specific area that you're building your work around, then you see if specific laws such as consumer protection laws, contract law, etc. apply. Now, even though India's laws pertaining to blockchain or India's laws pertaining to data itself is very limited, most of you who are building products or services using these technologies might do so for the world at large, right? When you're doing that, it is important to identify which global laws apply as well. So today, specifically, we are going to be looking at laws pertaining to data protection. This is because one common aspect or one common type of law, section of laws that do apply to software companies would be data protection laws. So several software companies based out of India, whether it is within Web3 or not, they make sure that their applications are GDPR compliant. GDPR is a data protection laws that EU follows. Much like GDPR, we have other laws such as PDPA for Singapore and several other data protection laws across the globe. Depending on the type of users that you wish to attract on your platform, you make sure that you take whatever steps necessary to comply with these laws, right? So in India, we don't yet have an active data protection law. You may be familiar with the DPDP Act, which has been in discussion for a few years now, but it isn't active yet. In the meantime, it is important to look at other global laws such as GDPR when we want to build tools which are compliant, at least in terms of data protection is concerned. I'm not going into a breakdown of these laws because that would be too technical. The agenda of the talk today is to expose you to the various types of laws that could apply, so that based on what could apply to your specific scenarios, you can explore it. And if necessary, we can have a follow-up session breaking down each of these laws at a later point of time. Now, some of the components that you can look into when considering data protection, specifically within Web3 is to ensure that personal data is not stored on chain. So laws like GDPR pose severe penalties if you don't take necessary protections to protect personal data. One right that data subjects have pertaining to personal data is the right to be forgotten. What this essentially means is that users can actually demand the platform which is processing this personal data to delete the said personal data on request when enforcing this right to be forgotten. Unfortunately, as you know, the nature of blockchain is such that the data stored on chain shall remain permanent, right? So when you are designing platforms which has to process personal data, it may be ideal for you to not store that personal data directly on chain, making it difficult for that right to be forgotten to be exercised. Instead, it might be ideal to store that on other, say, decentralized servers or other private servers and store its hash value perhaps on chain. Certain other actions that you can undertake, especially within the Web3 sphere, is to use privacy preserving technologies such as ZK or other technologies which could help encrypt the personal data to a large degree so that you could be GDPR compliant. A third aspect uh, when it comes to facilitating data protection is to collect only that data which is absolutely necessary. And finally, make sure that you have a clear accountability and governance structure within your organization itself, so that data is not misused within the organization. And there are necessary roles being dedicated to persons to ensure that these data protection measures are being actively followed. The applicable laws such as GDPR or PDPA, although it hasn't been enforced yet. Sorry, not PDPA, DPDP, or any other, or most other data protection laws itself would provide certain steps to be undertaken by organizations to ensure that there is appropriate accountability or governance structures within the organization. Whether the law itself or guides to these laws would provide some clarity on what these steps are. So depending on whether you are processing personal data of your users or not, I highly recommend that you review these specific data protection laws or necessary guides to ensure that you take necessary steps to protect your user data and that you are not at the receiving ends of having to pay these millions or billions of dollars as penalties, which even big companies like Meta and Google have unfortunately have to pay. Now, in addition to data protection steps, there are several other steps that you can take into consideration when you are designing or building Web3 platforms, right? One is to ensure that the platform itself is legally compliant. So what you need to do is when you decide that, okay, you want to build exchange, or you want to build a healthcare platform which processes sensitive personal data of people, or whatever it is that you want to build, you first identify what are the type of people who are going to be affected by this in terms of geography, right? Once you identify the geography, then you identify what are the laws within that geographical area that would apply. So if you are building a platform for Indians, which would require the use of personal data, then maybe data protection, and then any laws such as the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, or any other laws that would apply within that industry, is something that you should take into consideration. Second is KYC and AML, especially when you're designing, or as Indians, when you're designing platforms, it is very important for your platform to be PMLA compliant. And this means that you have necessary anti-money laundering and KYC measures incorporated into your system. Third, this is more of a technical requirement. Make sure that there is appropriate documentation. Fourth, make sure there are appropriate legal documents. So whether it's a privacy policy or a terms and conditions document, or whether you have proper licensing documents to use certain softwares, make sure that you have all the relevant legal documents in place. Fifth, make sure you do appropriate security audits. So if, let's say, there is a loophole or a bug within your system and somebody takes advantage of it, and let's say large amounts of funds are lost because of that bug, if it is shown that you have not taken appropriate measures to ensure such instances do not take place, you may be liable for those actions. It is also important to have internal security protections or protocols for the members. And ideally, because you are within a Web3 system, it is ideal for you to have a certain degree of transparency on how you function, either within the team itself or the public at large, depending on the mode in which you want to work. Are there any questions at this point before we go into workshopping a actual problem statement and designing anti-risk solutions for it. Any questions on legality? Okay, we have one question that I have not addressed, which is on application of the blockchain ledger for court arbitration. But before we go into that, I thought it would be nice if we all go through a problem statement based on a real life incident, which resulted in some developer liability and also owner liability in multiple jurisdictions, and see how we can design this particular platform or redesign this particular platform in a manner that the liability for the developer and the owner itself is limited. So there are, if I can just check how many people, okay, uh, I we have about 40 people on the call. Um, Okay, let me just see. Okay, so if we can take 10 minutes, 5 minutes to actually go through this problem, review it, and then take another 10 minutes to write down what are the so we looked at potential steps that we can undertake to prevent risk, right? So what are maybe 2 to 5 steps that you can undertake when designing a systems or redesigning a system such as this to avoid this risk? After that 15 minutes, we can actually share that here on chat, or if you are up for it, you can unmute yourself and we can have a discussion about it. So this is to give each of us a better understanding of how we can design safer protocols, safer platforms, safer services which uses blockchain technology. Is that okay?
Sneha, you might have just pressed by mistake the right click button so that
Okay.
yeah, that extra details have been come up in front.
Yes. Sorry, let me just reshare. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's clear now.
Okay. So we'll take 5 minutes to just read it. If it's not big enough, let me know. I can share a link as well. Let's take 5 minutes to read it. And then let's take another 5 to 10 minutes, ideally 5 more minutes, to write down 3 to 5 steps that we will undertake to minimize the risk. So these can be just simple steps, but if you want to add, if you can substantiate with the actual law, especially laws we have discussed today, that would be great. But otherwise, we can just limit it to simple steps that we can use. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask either on chat or even privately. Feel free to. All right. So I'm hoping you have had a chance to read it. Um, do you already have your answers on the anti-risk measures that you can undertake? If yes, you can actually start posting your answers here on chat. There are no wrong answers, so please feel free to write whatever you think. Or if you were designing or redesigning this protocol, what would be the measures that you would undertake? That is already not evident in this problem statement here. So we see that the protocol has been under review for misuse by sanctioned entities for money laundering. All right. So, okay. So the first answer that we have is being compliant to AML CFT norms. Yes, thank you. So okay, so going back to some of the best practices that we can undertake, one is compliance by design. So here, since this particular protocol handles virtual digital assets, it is important for it to be AML compliant. So that is definitely one. Any more? I will give you one more minute and then we can move on. If you want to look at some of the key steps I've stated here, that would be great. Okay, so if any more answers, or shall I go ahead and Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to list out a few best practices that we can take into consideration when building a protocol like this. So this problem statement is actually based on the ZK Cash incident where the developer had been arrested in Netherlands for him having developed this open source protocol, this decentralized open source protocol, because he was accused of facilitating people to launder money into sanctioned countries. Now, his defense was that it was just an open source protocol. He just wanted to create a privacy first protocol for people. He never intended it for it to be misused for money laundering. Despite that, he was arrested. The case has been appealed against. There is a case happening in the US as well as in Netherlands. In Netherlands, although he was found guilty, the case has been appealed against and he is on bail during this period. So now, looking back at this product, this protocol that he has developed, what are some of the steps that we can incorporate to make sure that we ourselves don't find ourselves in jail, right? So to start off with, we first lay down what it is that we want to build. Right now, it is a ZK Cash-like protocol, right? Which involves use of virtual digital assets. It involves use of users from across the globe. So we look at laws which might be applicable. One law which is definitely applicable is the PMLA. And the PMLA in India requires that, let me go back, it requires that identity of users must be verified. So we make sure that we incorporate necessary KYC measures to identify users. But in this particular case, the whole purpose of the protocol is to make sure that the identity of people remain private, right? So when we have a debate at hand between following the law and ensuring that the ethical considerations for building this protocol is called into question, what do? We try to balance both. So in this particular case, what we could do is incorporate KYC measures to ensure that people's identities are being verified, but at the same time we can incorporate necessary encryption or necessary technological measures such as ZK, etc., to ensure that the users themselves or the people handling the platform do not have access to the personal details of the user. This way, we draw that balance where we don't really have access to personal details, thereby maintaining privacy. But at the same time, we have certain measures in place to ensure that their identity has been verified. Similarly, we can record transactions and encrypt it so that users of the platform or those running the platform do not have access to it, unless, of course, there is a potential case which requires this to be decrypted. Then there could be a specific protocol in place that you have internally designed and documented to address these specific instances. And of course, you can verify, or rather you can make sure that you're paying attention to activities within your platform. And in case there is some suspicious activity, you can report it. Now, coming back, documentation is something that we've already covered. We make sure that relevant legal documents are in place. So there must be just to give you a few examples, although not exhaustive, make sure that at the time of designing where you are employing people, there are relevant documents, relevant contracts defining your roles, defining responsibility, defining liability between you, ensure that there is an appropriate terms and conditions document in place, a privacy policy in place, right? Ensure that you have appropriate security audits. It would be great if you have external audits as well. Aspects like transparency, security audits, in security protections, etc., are things that are probably already covered within your respective coursework within blockchain, within KBA itself. But as far as legal protections are concerned, I would say start by identifying the industry it is that you're working on. In this case, you're handling virtual digital assets, and then start by looking at the geography. Where are your users? Where is your company incorporated? Where will your work be used? And then check if relevant laws of that country, which relevant laws of that country will apply, and make sure that what you're designing is compliant as per those laws. So yes, with that, I'm going to wind up the primary part of this workshop. I hope you have a basic understanding of how legal protections within this space works. And while we have very limited legal protections specifically addressing blockchain use cases in India, it would be ideal to look at global laws, whether it's GDPR or securities laws, and not just laws, just practices of global state authorities like, let's say, the SEC, etc., to give us an understanding of how things might function here in India. So while we may not have explicit laws here pertaining to many things, try to understand how laws are applied across the globe to give you an understanding of how you might need to function. But this is just until we have specific laws to address our specific use cases. So thank you. If you have any more questions pertaining to this, please drop in a message or unmute yourself and ask. To go back to the first question, which is, can judicial systems leverage blockchain ledger for court arbitration? I think most definitely yes. There are actually private arbitration protocols like Juris, which is using blockchain for dispute resolution. But our courts, state courts itself could leverage from using some of these technology, whether for storage of evidence, recording of judicial procedures, appointment of jurors or adjudicators for specific arbitration proceedings, etc. So yes.
Thank you, Sneha. So audience, if you have any questions, please post it in the chat, or if you want to ask it directly, you can unmute yourselves. So, Sneha, by the time if anybody wants to ask the question, I have a question here. One is regarding this patent regarding patent infringements. Like the number of patents in blockchain has been coming up, and there is this concern about this open source licensing and the required clauses that would be satisfied while complying with this patent norms. So, what is your thoughts about it? Because it's just like there was one report on global legal insights that was published last year, and they were mentioning about this patent infringement suits, which concerns on these licenses when they have been used not appropriately. So, yeah, just wanted to know your thoughts about this.
Yes. So I haven't understood the question specific, like when there has been a patent infringement and not following through with the patent license.
I mean, I will try to again put it more simpler, try to put it simpler. This is regarding this number of patents where blockchains have been used. And as we know, the software codes, there are like many times we use this open source software in this code designing and development.
Yes.
And there are also this licensing of norms here. Like for example, here we have this GPL and this Apache license and everything. And gone to see that they have certain clauses in which they ask the contributor or the creator to just be sharing their or distribute their portion of the code. So how come this, and again, if this doesn't satisfy, then they are sued for this as part of this patent infringement.
Yes.
So how will we be able to combat this part? Because in this case, this again creates an apprehension among the genuine developers or the creators of patents who wants to contribute in this blockchain landscape.
Right. Okay. So a lot of all right. a lot of these licenses or open source licenses which are being used, right? Some of them have certain terms within it which says that if you as a developer who is going to be relying on this and who is going to be using this software in their platform, if you're doing this, please ensure that you pay it forward, which is that make sure that what you are building also remains open for other people. I think this follows the model of like the copyleft, right? So the idea here is to make sure that everything remains open, innovation is open. People are not like hindered with heavy costs of having to pay for these licenses to be able to innovate. The infringement here might come, I'm assuming, when when somebody relies on these open licenses and then decides to commercialize their product, right? Is that
Right, right, right,
right?
right.
Right, right. So, I don't have much to say than to say that it is downright wrong. And legally speaking, you can be sued for, uh, violating the terms of a license. So whether it is a commercial license where you've paid for something and you're using it, but outside the purview of what you've licensed that software for. For example, you have paid to use a software, you have the license to use it for A, B, C, but then you decide, oh, I've paid for it, might as well use it for D and E, you're going to get into trouble. It's as simple as breaking the law. It's as simple as stealing food from a supermarket without paying for it, right? Similarly, even if it's a non-commercial license, you're using something open source, and you're benefiting from free work, right? Because it was intended to promote innovation. You're taking that and then you decide to commercialize your product going against that specific license. You are going to get into trouble. There might be legal action taken against you. The bigger problem, B, is I think more of a moral issue, right? Here you have people who are putting in a lot of effort into innovating and making the world a better place, right? And creating and putting it out there for free for the betterment of the society. And you are abusing it. So in addition to it being a legal concern, which is definitely going to land you in hot water, you might have to pay large penalties. I think it's a moral issue as well. So I think right from inception, right from maybe um, exposing developers to the technical aspects, like whether it's in engineering schools or workshops or boot camps or whatever it is, we don't just focus on how can we technically build something. We focus also on ethics. We also talk about licenses, learn what these licenses are, what are the consequences, what is the larger benefit of using these licenses and adhering to it. I think we should also spend time focusing on the importance of building open source. So then maybe people would not be inclined to abuse.
Yeah, but there needs to be a balance itself, because then innovation also won't thrive, or there might not be an incentive for a contributor or a creator to come up with some patents in this landscape also.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
So
almost every time in this patent regime, the software patents have almost been questioned. I mean, there are lots of clauses and criterias that come up whenever a software patent comes into picture. In most of the times, they are undermined or they are not being accepted because this kind of open source clauses come into picture. But then at the same time, we have to appreciate the innovative aspect of creators in the same line.
yes. At the same time, I think it's important to understand the prerequisites for a patent to be granted to what it is that you are inventing. By definition, a patent requires newness or innovation. So if you are building something on the back of something that's already existed, is that really innovation? But if it is true innovation, I don't see, if it requires the prerequisites for a patent to be granted, I don't see there being a problem. The law seems to be pretty clear there. It is definitely the responsibility of those innovating and applying for those patents and who want the requisite protections to ensure that the prerequisites there have been met the right way.
Yeah, in most of the times when there are no those conventional laws set into place, the judiciary or the legal attorneys they take the help of this precedents like landmark judgments as a reference, right? So there itself, like as you mentioned about identifying what is a patent itself is a very a crucial part. And in that itself, there are many judgments itself which has proven that maybe at sometimes they have to go for though like they have to go very intrinsic towards how these patents have been developed and all with the provisional features of those, and then how they have come up with the new ones. So yeah, that's there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Participants, we have the Google form pasted in the chat. So please fill it to get your blockchain powered certificate. And if we don't have any questions from the audience, then we will wind up for today. Uh, Thank you so much, Sneha, for being with us and giving us an informative and incredible session. We got a lot to know about this legalities and the legal risks that are aligned whenever we get to develop something in blockchain and use cases. So thank you once again, and we wish you all the best for all your ventures to come.
Thank you so much for facilitating this. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So let's meet for next another session. And until then, do stay on updated with our YouTube channel and other social media handles for similar updates. Thank you.